So, we are Double Helix Review. This is Jung-Ah Kim. I'm Janice McCoy. Today we are reviewing The Peripheral by William Gibson.
Right, so let's give you a short summary. It's a bleak, near future, and our heroine, Flynn, fills in for her brother, working in virtual security in an immersive game environment. What happens is she sees something, and it ends up with something that's much more serious than she could have predicted. It leads to danger, death, and ultimately a new understanding of her reality as she knew it.
So, did it work for us?
Overall, I think yes.
Yeah. No, without its flaws, but in our opinion anyway. But yeah, it worked. I was pulled in right away. I thought the plot was complicated without being too hard to follow. Something that I sometimes struggle with William Gibson. He usually deals with complicated ideas and complicated technology and sometimes convoluted plots, and it can be a pleasure trying to do the work to follow what's going on. But here, I didn't think I had to work too hard to figure out what was happening.
It's smoother.
It's a little bit smoother, yeah. And Flynn and our other main character, who there's an alternating first-person point of view.
Oh,
is it first person, or is it third-person limited? I think it's third-person limited.
Yes.
But it's from Flynn's point of view in one chapter, and then from Will's point of view in the other. And Gibson, I think, deals very thoughtfully with the technology of what he calls peripherals, more thoughtfully than James Cameron did with the technology of avatars and Avatar. Basically the same idea. But for Cameron, it seems all good. No real complications, except maybe you like your avatar better than your body. That seems to be the only real complication in that.
Blue-skinned alien. Why wouldn't you love it?
Yeah, interestingly, there's a little bit of an overlap, though, right? Because we do have two characters who are coming from like broken or disabled bodies in one reality, and they take on this other body in the other reality that is, perfect,
yes,
or able, and
that's
they
true.
both deal with the attraction of leaving behind your damaged body for a different body. But I thought Gibson's was more complicated and more nuanced, which is a book. I guess it's not really fair to compare a movie to a book. Another thing I liked was that for complicated reasons that I won't get into because I don't want to give too much away, Flynn and Wilf live in two contrasting visions of what the future might hold for us. And I kind of liked the two separate visions working side by side.
Yeah, that's true. And how they intersect.
And yeah.
And I have to say, it is quite funny that, William Gibson has chosen to take on this concept which was outlined very well in Avatar. But I think, if you look at the title, The Peripheral, and the way that he describes it in the book, he clearly tried really hard to disengage from the concept that's outlined in Avatar to an extent. And he tried to make it his own, to forge his own path. Yeah. And it's funny. It's funny because the entire world has been obliterated with this vision of Avatar technology as presented by James Cameron, and yet William Gibson is trying to present something that's different. Yeah. Similar, but different. I think it must have been a very conscious effort for the writer to try to come up with something new.
Right.
And I think that he did a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. He definitely came up with more nuances, more technical difficulties. It's not just you're in there and you go. That's not how it works. And one of the things that was a little sad for me was to realize that yes, there's two contrasting visions of what the future looks like, but both of them are dystopian.
That is true.
And
that is true.
There's a world that's recreated from a doomed world that is not beautiful, that is extreme in its violence and lack of privacy and death and very voyeuristic, and it's sad.
It is.
Other
world's not much better though.
No, it's not. That's what's sad about it. There's two contrasting visions of the future, and neither one very optimistic. Things that didn't work for me was a little bit of the plot. I would characterize this as kind of a cyberpunk Agatha Christie style whodunit. I feel like everything was so smooth about this book, including the new world and the technology. So it was a little disappointing that the flow of the plot for me wasn't really that natural. It felt like the author had an end goal in mind and kind of worked backwards into it.
Okay.
That's kind of how it felt for me.
Okay. I love mysteries, so it didn't bother me. Actually, what bothered me was some of the technology, not so much the peripheral, but another key piece of technology, which I won't reveal because part of the pleasure of reading the book is discovering these two worlds, how they're connected, what the technology is going on behind the scenes. But you don't really find out much about this key technology because it's mysterious. The characters don't understand it, and they think that maybe there's a server in China.
There's always a server.
It's some kind of mysterious, Yeah, it's a little Deus Ex Machina, I guess. And maybe even a little bit of that whole exotic East unknown thing going on. I don't know. I found that unsatisfying, but on the other hand, it allowed him to take some imaginative leaps that current technology and current even projected technology couldn't get you there. It has to be something so many generations ahead of where we are that we wouldn't really understand it in order to have this happen. But still, I didn't love that. The other thing I didn't love actually was that I felt the characters were pretty flat. The worlds were very complicated. The technology was very complicated and sophisticated. The characters themselves, very black and white. They were good or they were bad.
Yeah, I would agree with that. On the technology front, I completely agree. It was unsatisfying how it was resolved, and we actually have a separate interview with our resident quantum scientist about that because it involves quantum computing. The way that I saw the characters, who are definitely flat, it reminded me very much of a video game. So you have an elaborate world, but the players are essentially just, black and white. That was kind of confusing to me as well, and I think part of it I can attribute to the lack of depth that I found in the plot, because it doesn't allow for the characters to grow because of the flatness of the plot. That's true. That's kind of how I felt.
That's true. Yeah. There was one character who the one I mentioned actually, the one who has the damaged from war body, who enjoys the peripherals maybe more than he should. And he is drawn to violence and is more flawed than the others. But he's a minor character. And I think, as you mentioned, we maybe aren't supposed to sympathize with him because he is so flawed.
Right.
But I would look for flaws in my characters. I mean, I guess Wilf is supposed to be flawed in his substance abuse problems.
Yes. But that's kind of by the by, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's almost a comical side.
It's a bit of a comic relief, right?
Because he's always looking for his next drink.
Yes. Yes. And the cabinet.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
You can't get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd even give a trigger warning for substance abuse though, because it's never really a problem.
It's not a subject matter.
It's not a subject matter, and it never really seems to take over his life. It just does seem to be just
an interesting,
a quirky personality trait almost for him.
Right. Yeah. And I think you mentioned you don't think this is one of the best.
I don't think this is one of Gibson's best. No. I'm partial to Neuromancer and some of the earlier works. But he is, striking out and trying to grapple with new ideas of technology and going in a different direction than his other stuff. So, it's interesting. If you're a Gibson fan, I think you should pick it up and check it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the more thought out, detailed illustrations of science fiction than, say, something else, like another Star Wars novel.
Right, or yet another apocalyptic plague novel. We've read a lot of those this year.
Yes, this is the year of the apocalyptic plague.
I guess appropriate with the whole Ebola thing, but this is something completely different. So
yes.
If you're looking for, ideas about technology and how it might change us, this could be for you.
Yeah. So overall, we think it's a great read, but it lacks in some depth of a level of depth for characters. It's a best fit for a William Gibson fan or someone who really likes a glimpse into the future with a sprinkle